Hey everybody, welcome back to the Marketing Box podcast. For today's entrepreneur feature, we have Bull and Bear Investments here. Austin Kinchen and Mitch Miller. So everybody, let's give them a warm welcome. We're so excited to get into today's discussion. We're going to cover a lot of topics. So I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Mitch Miller here. Originally from Indiana, live in North Carolina now. My background is I kind of bought a few properties when I was a little bit younger and started to grow my portfolio and really started to really enjoy all the benefits of real estate. But I started to see a problem with, my time being eaten up more and more with the properties I was purchasing. And that's kind of how we got to Bull and Bear. We kind of solved the problem of trading your time for properties. And we'll dive more into that, as we talk through the podcast.
Yeah. And then, so I guess I'm Austin Kinchen then, if that's Mitch, right? I'm a father of four. Scuba diver, sports player. Mitch and I met on the tennis court. Actually, that's where our friendship first happened. And then, similar to Mitch's story, started off doing some personal real estate investing and linked up with Mitch, and then it was just history from there.
Nice, man. How did you guys meet each other?
Yeah, so I had moved to North Carolina for I was working at a pharmaceutical company at the time, and I took a sales operations role in-house. So went up there, and right before I moved, I started getting into tennis, and I wanted to join a team, but didn't know anybody up there. So found the local website and signed up on a sign-up genius. Like, will you play? I just want to play tennis. Put me on a team, right?
Right.
And one of the questions they ask you is like, are you willing to captain? And I was like, well, man, if it means I got to be on a team, like I'll be willing to captain. So sure enough, I do that, and guess what? I got picked to be a captain, right? And so it works. And they're like, hey, here's the other random people that signed up to play tennis without knowing anybody. So we got this group of guys together that was just, none of us knew any of us. And we just showed up on a tennis court one day. We're like, hey, let's go play. And a bunch of guys like similar age, similar stage of life. And I don't know why Mitch and I played together. Maybe I saw his aggression on the court. And I was like, yeah, I think I can work with that guy. And so Mitch was my doubles partner. And so we played together for years. And that's where it all started. We won a few tournaments together, won a couple state championships. No big deal. But
no joke, man.
Yeah.
So what is that? Is that like just like an adult tennis league? Kind of
yeah,
thing?
like so USTA, like just formal league tennis kind
Okay.
of thing. But like I said, we've done some like little fun tournaments at like clubs and like things on the weekends and stuff.
So that's where it all began.
It is, yeah.
Well, it's funny because Austin, talks about, being from Louisiana. And Louisiana is a very proud state. And so, we all knew he was from there. But it wasn't until his daughter's 5th birthday, my wife was out of town. And he's like, hey, like come over. I'm doing a crawfish boil, and want to, come over and enjoy it. And so I did, and definitely an experience. I got over early, got to help him make it and see how it's, how it's made, I guess, per se. But I think that's where we really sat down for the first time. We probably played for a year together.
Yeah.
And really it was like, we'd, kind of mop up on the court, and then it'd be like, all right, we'll see you next week. And, we left. And that was like the first time we sat down and kind of talked, and like we kind of connected on like, had the same aspirations. Like we kind of wanted to more in life, and, Austin had some things he wanted to kind of get done. And so it was kind of that was the start at his daughter's birthday.
That's interesting, man. So you guys inadvertently get put together on a tennis team, just play tennis for a year, get your first get together, sit down, and you didn't realize you had a tremendous amount in common. Well, so is that when that's when I guess the spark started happening, where you guys, I guess that was the next step before, you guys arrived at where you are today.
Oh yeah. Mitch, being as gracious as he is, just like, hey man, like I'm a few steps ahead of you. Like here's everything I know, right? Like I always joked with him that at some point I expected to like receive a bill in the mail. It's like, hey, here's like, you owe me $5,000 for like everything I just taught you. Yeah. Which is out of the goodness of his heart, was just like, would sit down with me and walk me through stuff. But then it's funny to the same time, like obviously we work together, but like, we're best friends too. And we joke a lot that like, we're like scary similar to each other in a lot of weird ways. So like even from like the real estate connection, like just how well we get along and the way we think about things, like it's almost comical to think of like how, kind of just the circumstances of how we met was just kind of crazy. But yeah.
So y'all are from two completely different walks of life, but you guys do share a lot in common. Let's talk a little bit about that, because you guys get along so well. And before we started recording, it was a really interesting conversation and Sean asked, like, what's the difference between you guys' background? And you said we're actually very different. Let's talk about that. What makes you guys such great partners?
Yeah, go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just dive into my background, and I'm sure Austin will dive in his. I came from, from a single mother. My father was never really in my life. Never went hungry or homeless, so there's obviously, I had some advantages there, but it was always a struggle. I always had to kind of find ways to, make money to buy the sneakers to play basketball, had to, save up for my own car and those type of things. And so for me, money was always like in the forefront of my mind. And it really wasn't until college that I met a mentor that really, I honestly say, changed my life. And, I think that's why even in, like, me and Austin still go to meetups, and, people ask, like, why are you giving so much? Like, to his point, people are always expecting, like, a course, like, well, like, pay for my course or pay for my coaching. And what I tell people is, like, I would not be anywhere near where I would be today if it wasn't for the people that just graciously gave to me. And so giving back is always going to be a piece of that. And I always like to tell a story. I was sitting down my freshman year. He's like, hey, let's go to dinner. Like we kind of connected a little bit. And he's like, let's go to dinner. He's like, what are your goals? And like my true goal was like, I just want to make $40,000 a year. And like, he starts laughing, and I was like, I was kind of like, I mean, it's my goal. Like, and he was like, you'll make well over 100. And to me, like, you couldn't have put any number there, but like, that was like an infinite amount of money. I was like, that's your Lambo, that's your dream house. And through my years in college, like, he really helped me through that. And because of that, I think, like, I've always like pushed myself in education. And so after graduation, I was lucky. I got an education. I'm in software consulting. And so I was able to go into a career that, started off fairly well and make a decent amount of money. But I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it just changed my perspective, right? And as gracious as I was to be where I was, I knew I wanted more.
Which book?
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh, okay.
By Robert Kiyosaki. Okay. And it pretty much talks about like the rat race. And I was like, I'm so thankful I was able to see it like in the first 6 months of my, career, that I was just putting money in a 401k. Like, I remember like my 401k was like, heck yeah, I got a couple $100 in here. Like, and it's like, it's fun to see. But, I quickly realized that like doing math, it's like, this doesn't add up. Like, I'm going to be here forever, or I'm going to work for 40 years and to be where I want. Like, that doesn't seem fun or where I want to do it. The book talks about real estate. And so I jumped into real estate. I talked about accidentally buying my first triplex. We can kind of go in that if we want, but that was the start, and really opened my eyes that I could buy something and make more from it than what I'm paying.
How old were you?
I was 24.
Yeah.
So.
And what goes into that first piece of real estate? How complicated is it? How hard is it? What's the tricks of somebody wanting to start off doing this? Is there a clearly defined process that anybody can go figure it out and get to their first property?
I'm a strong believer anyone can figure it out. I would just say, like, there's a good balance between education and action. You'll see people that move too quick and make mistakes, right? And then they kind of never want to touch it again. You also see people that kind of stay in that education stage forever. We call it analysis paralysis.
Oh,
yeah. And
you always use that term.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a balance, but I'm a strong believer that action cures all. And so, maybe asking for help. I mean, most cities have real estate meetups. There's going to be people like me and Austin there that like generally just want to help. And so like, hey, like, does this look like a good investment? And
Gotcha. So if you're looking for it, you can find it.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing we talk about a lot too is when we say, like, even if you make a bad buy and you lose money, like, if you gain knowledge from that, like, that's ultimately like the silver lining, right? So you got to be learning even in your mistakes, especially in real estate. So to Mitch's point, I think the paralysis by analysis is the most dangerous stage to be in, right? Like, doing action like cures all those issues for sure.
Yeah. You got to get your nose bloodied.
Right.
Sometimes you got to get in the game, get in the fight.
And like, me and Austin see so many people spend $10,000 on a course, and they're like, oh, I still don't know much. And it's like, I would much rather you go botch a rental and lose $10,000. You'll learn so much more by doing that than you will possibly. I mean, I'm sure there's good courses out there, but possibly spending that $10,000 on, someone else's expertise.
So when you guys are looking for a deal, like, so take us through that, like the thought process, the deal, what does it look like? What type of deals, what price range deals? Like, how do you go through the process of figuring out if it's good or not?
Yeah, so jumping straight to syndications, where we are now, I would say that we first look at the people in the deal, because like, we're big, like, put the right people on the bus, like, we're going to find a way to win, and that's the people we want to partner with. And so we typically look for someone that has a competitive advantage, right? They found a deal that was off market, or they had a troubled, distressed seller, or they have a partnership with like a regional property manager, those type of things.
That's where your lead flow comes from. your deal flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we're in a network. I mean, we've performed in our duties from the deals that we've been in. So like we get offers quite often, and we do our own due diligence on what we want to do. But then the big thing that me and Austin, I think, do that maybe a lot of capital raisers don't is like we do our own due diligence. Like we dive into the numbers, we ask questions. We're not just taking the book at face value. It's like you say 20% returns. Let's figure out why you got there and make sure that we feel comfortable, because I mean, our start was friends and family. And so like we always go to bat for our people. Obviously we've grown now to a bigger portfolio of investors, but we stand true. Like that's our name that we're putting behind.
Well, it probably helps out, makes it where there's much less chance of error, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think one thing too that maybe people who've never really dove into the investment side of real estate is a lot of times if you think of like buying a primary home, people tend to get very emotional, right? When it comes to that, like, oh, I just see myself, I see my family in this house, and there's this emotional connection to it. And so sometimes we've seen that in the last year, right, where these prices just skyrocket out of control. For us, it's a numbers game, right? At the end of the day, like if the numbers don't make sense, it's not a good deal. And we stand by those. So it allows us to have very clear vision on when we move forward and when we don't.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Mitch talked a little bit about his background. What's yours, Austin?
Yeah. So, my background was, I was raised by my mom and my dad. They were married, still married to this day. And my dad actually played in the NFL for a couple of years. Sean, you crossed paths on the football field.
Yeah.
But for me, my dad set a very unrealistic expectation for me as a child. And I probably didn't realize at the time because I was just I thought everybody's dad, did something cool and made enough money to support their family and be around, right? Because, he'd go to practice and then be back home when I was home from school. So, out of school, like I wanted to find something that I could make decent money at and be there home with my family. Well, I found out very quickly that my dad wasn't very helpful because I'm like, hey, Dad, like, how do I do this? Or where do I find this? And he was like, well, I don't know. I never did that. So, I had to figure that on my own, while at the same time, like, not living my dad's shadows, but like he did something great and substantial and made an impact. And so, I had this drive to do something with my life as well too. And I found that in the pharmaceutical world. And so, my goal was like, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder. Like I'm going to be the CEO and run a business unit, and I started putting my time and energy into that. And I had a conversation with a boss when I moved to North Carolina, where I was really working hand in hand with the VP of sales and a CEO. And I saw their quality of life and their work-life balance. And I kind of had this panic attack of like, oh man, like that's not what I had modeled for me. And that's not what I want to deliver to my family either. And, my boss at the time, he drew this graph and was like, if you want to make this much, if you become a director, you can make this much money. If you want to be a VP of sales, you can make this much money, CEO, right? And it was like, if you want to get to that next step, here's how you do that. And internally, I was like, well, I don't know that I really want to do that. Like, am I peaked at my earning potential here? And, at that time, I had a single rental property that I kept and managed, but I didn't know how to scale that. And, Mitch came along and very similar path from education with the books we read. And it was just like, okay, like, here's my opportunity to be involved in something that can create a lifestyle for me and my family that allows me to spend the time and energy on the things and people that I love. Yeah. Right. And so for me, it created this thing that I kind of thought was unattainable the older I got when I saw what my dad did and was able to kind of give me a path forward. And so like, that's what I love sharing with people is that like, you don't have to go and punch a clock 9 to 5 every day to create, financial success and generational wealth for your family and stability.
That's why I love doing this podcast, because that is the main reason why Sean really wanted to kickstart this, to feature people like you, because there are way more people in this world that we know that want to do that same exact thing. They don't want to do the 9 to 5. Like, they don't want to work for the big man. They want to be their own boss. Yeah. So we really want to champion those individuals. And so having you guys on here today to tell your story helps us share that message. And I mean, you never know who you're going to inspire. So love that.
Yeah, you wonder, it's interesting that parents don't understand how their kids are watching and just taking in everything they're doing. And you might not see like how that impacts your kid until something like that comes up when you're like in your adult life and you're looking at a picture and it's like, wait a second, this looks a little different than the picture I was used to. I thought I was going to that picture, but this picture is different, man. And the ability, so you guys meet each other, y'all get to talking, at that pool party, And then when does the business connection like start between you, right? Because that, I'm sure that was that right from the get?
Yeah, I mean, it was almost right away. The go-to story, I think Mitch is
So you were in the
smirking 'cause-
pharmaceutical space, you're in
Yeah.
the real estate space, you guys playing tennis, you go this first meeting, and then do you share something like that with Mitch? Like
Yeah.
you just talk to us and it's like,
Yeah, so like I had a taste of real estate. So like I said,
Okay.
I had a single property. I was always drawn to real estate because it's like it made sense. Like, yeah, if I own something and someone's going to pay me to use it, like you don't have to be a genius to see like, oh, like that's pretty smart, right? I want to do more of that, but I didn't really know how to do more. So it had taken me probably 10 years to the point where I had created enough equity in my home, where when I left Baton Rouge, I could refinance my property, pull out enough capital to put a down payment on a house in North Carolina, and keep my primary home in Baton Rouge, right?
Gotcha.
Which
Yep.
we rented out and made a little bit. But that took me 10 years. I was like, I don't, how do I scale this, right? So Mitch and I are having this conversation at this crawfish boil. Like
Gotcha.
after I teach all these North Carolina people how to peel crawfish, right? You know, you take that for granted that people know how to do that. But
they slow you eating 10 to one.
oh yeah,
one.
we ate real good. We ate
You're
real
like,
good.
I'm getting full over here. You guys over there got about 4 crawfish in front of you.
That's right. And so we had this conversation, and Mitch is like, kind of what's keeping you from doing more? And I was like, well, Mitch, like, like I had a good job, I was providing for my family, but I had 3 kids at the time, and all my money, it went certain places, right? Like this went here, and so I told him, I was like, look, if I had to get $5,000 by the end of the month, like I don't know where I would get it from. Because I'd have to rob Peter to pay Paul, right? I'd have to stop contributing to a college account to put towards it. Like I wasn't struggling, but like I didn't know where it would come from. And I think he laughed at me in my face. I was like, "Are you joking?" I was like, "No."
I
Like,
smiled. I think it's over exaggeration. I didn't laugh in his face.
and
Let me come over here, young pup. Let me educate you.
well, that's exactly how it was. Because I think he started drooling at the mouth. I was like,
Oh
"This
my
is be a
God.
piece of cake," Like, and so I think. At the time, we were a little more formal, so Mitch was like, "Well, let's schedule a time to meet." So we set a time where he'd come over and really just kind of opened up my eyes to money that was all around me, and we can kind of get into some of those techniques later. But I think one of the things that both of our upbringings like kind of ingrained in us is like a scarcity mindset, right? So, my father, he made a decent amount of money, not NFL money today by any means, right? But like,
Right.
and then had this money that he had to live off of and raise 4 kids on his entire life. So, there was very much this idea of just being very thoughtful about decisions when it came to money, and passing on this because we need this to last, right? So, I had that same mindset. Mitch, with his upbringing, very similar, that we kind of go back to. So, when Mitch started showing me like where money was around me, I was like, wow, like this is a big perspective shift for me of thinking like, oh, I only have so much, to being like, well, now it's all over the place. Like now, how do I get it? How do I leverage it? How do I utilize those funds to do more and grow, all these funds even more and more and more down the road.
Yeah, so you filled in all the pieces, the puzzle, man, where it made sense.
Yeah.
And I think like the thing that really connected us is, so I did that a lot. Like I go to real estate meetups, I host real estate meetups in Raleigh, I run them, and I would talk to people, and everyone has that question. Like I want to get in real estate, right? Like I want to start a business. Like the common questions, and in the beginning, I would like almost be over like, how can I help you? Like I would push it. I slowly learned that how about you schedule a meeting with me, and if you do that, like I'm there for you. But, like you have to do some action, right?
Yeah.
And to get to Austin, like same thing, very willing to help. I sat down with him and actually like another guy on the tennis team and like went through all these things that like I thought would help them, and like they both, but Austin like really took after it. And it was like, it's one of those things where you meet someone that also is like action oriented and just gets stuff done.
Yeah.
And immediately even even more like firmly, like we were friends from like a competitive side, like on the tennis courts, but like it really like affirmed our relationships even more. Cause like even at another level, we were kind of the same. And so I'll give it back to Austin to kind of share what he got to do in like a year. But
Yeah. So, to Mitch's point, like taking a lot of action. So I think that conversation was, my daughter's birthday was May timeline. And so, within 5 months, Mitch showed me how to access equity in my home through a HELOC. So I was able to pull out funds there. We also talked about acquiring private capital. So I did some of that as well too. And within the first 5 months, I purchased just over $1 million worth of property and had, I think, 17 units.
Wow.
Yeah. So once again, like maybe it's like, not enough, or maybe it's like an overconfidence on my part, but I was just like, well, yeah, like I'm going to do it. like, let's just go for it. And now granted, like having Mitch there to affirm like what I was doing was so key, because at the end of the day, like I'm not reckless, right? And it's one of the reasons, like I think Mitch and I, when we had conversations about like, you know, working together from a business perspective, that I really appreciated about him was like I'm one of those people that I want to be in control. I don't like to delegate, like, because I know that I take a certain level of just deliberateness about everything I do. But I saw Mitch and his deliberateness and his due diligence, the way he handled his business. I was like, man, like I don't trust a lot of people do stuff, but like I would let this guy like do some stuff for me. And so when I saw that, like, it was great to know that he took it as serious as I did. So, you know, when I'm looking and crunching numbers and then I go to him for confirmation, like I know it's not him just kind of passing it. I'm like, yeah, it looks good. Like I know he's taking his time and he's digging in. And he's like, I don't think he got into his past job, but like he's like accounting tech guy, right? About as nerdy as it can get.
Right,
so it's like, it's a really nice compliment.
Boy, you're a good one to have on a team.
I'm telling you, right? So it really worked out well. So that enabled me, I think, probably to move faster than most. And so I'm not going to sit here and take full credit, because Mitch had a huge part to do with that.
So 17 units, is that one deal, or it's like 17 deals, or just multiple deals?
Yep. So it's a combination of single family homes and small small residential multifamily properties.
Nice. And so the deal is you buy them and flip them, or you buy them and hold them?
Yes. So and so we're talking now specifically about kind of our personal portfolio. So all of those I still hold and maintain. So they're more of a buy and hold type property. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. And does it, when you look, so how are you making a decision? Is it cash flow? And that's basically how, you know, you guys go in and say this is going to work or not work. It's based on the rents and what you have to pay in a mortgage, and then what the difference is.
Yeah. So he learned from me, and I'm a big cash flow guy. I think cash flow makes sense, and it's something that's like tangible right away. Where if you go for the appreciation side, like you honestly can make more in appreciation, but the problem is you're betting on things that you can't control.
Yeah.
And I think that's like we're starting to get into the benefits of what I like in real estate, and that is you can have full control over it. So like you look at a deal, like, and you can see it, and once you get into real estate and you've done a couple of deals, like you can understand that there's certain things that you can do that, you know, will make the value go up, or you can raise rents, or you can look at comps, or something. You can do due diligence and make sure that it's a business plan that's fairly successful, like a high win rate. And so you're taking control. And so for us, it's cash flow, right? If you do appreciation, it's like, well, if you didn't see the interest rates hikes coming, like you're kind of upside down. Now you're paying for something probably even more than if you didn't have cash flow to begin with, you know?
Yeah, so what happens in this current environment, man, with people that were going the appreciation route? Because like you said, you're kind of betting on something that's uncertain, and maybe it's a higher return, but now here we come with 7 and 8% interest rates. So what happens, and what does that do to the market ultimately, do you think?
Yeah, dividing it in two. So I think residential, and that's, you know, a great, easy place to start, because like Austin said, I think it's very like forgiving. If you can handle it, like a lot of people have fixed rate mortgages on residential rates. So I think the stats, like 94% of people have fixed rates. So if they can keep paying that, they're going to be okay. But their exit might be pushed, right? If they're like, hey, I'm going to hold it for a year and make 20 grand, it's like, well, that now it's a question mark, right? They're going to hold it, and they might be paying it for years. Commercial is a whole other story. Commercial debt, you know, typically 12 years is the longest. We typically see 5-7 years is very common, like terms. And if you're trying to sell on this rate, I mean, it's a cap rate, and now we're kind of getting nerdy. You guys asked the question, but like the rates are going to be pushing the values down. So it's a bad time to sell. Mm-hmm. It's a really bad time to refinance.
Right.
And so there's a really, you know, there's a kind of like a big problem. And so if you weren't making cash flows, you weren't paying down your debt, you could be stuck holding what we call bad debt. Like you're going to have to sell, and either your investors or you personally have to lose some capital, because, I mean, if you can't refinance, like you're going to default. So you'd sell for a loss and try to make up the difference.
Yeah, because, you know, yesterday we had our company lunch at the Roosevelt, and a good friend of mine's the head of security for the company that owns the Roosevelt. They own 77 properties, and he was telling me he's been spending a lot of time in Nashville because they built a Hyatt, and next to the Hyatt they built 2 40-story towers for Amazon for just another remote business. He said there might be 100 people in each one of those buildings right now, man. It's 40,000 square feet, and they're fairly new, and there's nobody in them. So, like, that's happening all over the place.
Yeah.
You start to wonder when it comes unwound, what happens, because I think when those dominoes start falling, it's like, how do you stop them?
Yeah.
For us, I think it's an interesting time though too, because like I said, ultimately a lot of what we do comes down to vetting people we choose to work with.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a really good opportunity to see who really knows their stuff, and where's the pretenders, right? Anyone can be successful in a bear market, right? It's like who can be successful in bull, who can be successful in a bear market. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So do those kind of things like in New York and the one I just described, what kind of implications, that might not touch the exact business that you guys are in, but I would imagine it's got to have ramifications just downstream on everything when those kind of big properties start to come unwound, the impact that it has and pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think where we play, I think purchasing gives us a lot of value.
Okay.
Because if we can buy things right now, I think we have just a great, it's like we're buying at a low, right? We're buying, the market's harder, so we're buying properties at a cheaper valuation or a low or a higher cap rate. If the rates do turn, typically one of our biggest expenses is our debt service, right? So if our rates turn, we can refinance, and now we're in a really good spot. And as these bigger cities, we pretty much invest in residential, so multifamily apartment buildings in like tertiary markets. So we're not investing in LA, Miami, New York.
Gotcha.
We're investing in Waco, Texas. We're investing in Oklahoma City. We're investing in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
So it's kind of independent of that whole thing going on.
And what we're seeing in the markets that we like are the Southeast, in these like lower cost of living places. And what our studies have shown that we like is that people are moving these lower costs of living because they can work anywhere. Why would you want to go spend $3,500 for a
that's true.
700 square foot apartment in New York City?
Yeah, the whole remote work thing.
We were just talking about that yesterday. In fact, last night, whenever we were walking around New Orleans, I was looking up at the buildings and I'm questioning. I'm like, are those offices or apartments now? Because with the whole work from home thing, like people, you don't know anymore.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about that, and that's funny.
So how many employees?
Well, we actually have one more. We actually just brought on a marketing person, and he's the reason we're here. So he's
Shout out to McCain.
yeah.
I've known McCain for a long time.
It was one of those things we looked at, like, look, sometimes we're overconfident, Mitch and I, obviously. And so, like, either one of us are great at social media, and we really tried our hand to be good at it. And we get to the point where, like, all right, we're going to post once a week. And I'm like, all right, it's your turn. I'm like, no, it's your turn this time. And we get back and forth, like, all right, we need some help here.
That's when you need someone like me who's going to be like, okay, you have to do this
Exactly.
today. No, I mean, I saw, so you guys started Bare Necessities. I saw that. What's that now? Is that just going to be like your weekly or daily tips, or what is that?
Yeah, so we've got 2 new segments, and once again, McCain told us these, so we'll try to deliver this correctly. So we have Bare Necessities and Bull in the Ring are our 2. I don't even know what we would call them. What reels? Segments
Okay.
or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
We have our stuff kind of segmented out
Yeah.
too. Like we do the entrepreneur spotlights, and
Yep.
then we have our tips and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
So Bare
Okay.
Necessities, to answer your question, is what we'd say is like real estate basics, right? So we're talking terminology, things that Mitch and I probably take for granted, that McCain is like, as he's learning, because he wants to know more. That's why he's helping as well. It's like, well, hey, you guys said that in a way that I didn't understand. Let's fix it.
Exactly what we do.
Right. So we try to do that with Bare Necessities, where Bull in the Ring is geared more towards challenging financial status quos or agendas that's been pushed for years, that your financial advisor probably tells you over and over again that anyone with a pulse can probably regurgitate. And that segment for us is like, okay, this is why that's not true. There might be a better way to look at it.
What's an example of that?
So we can talk about savings accounts. That's one McCain
Yeah,
told
I'd
us we need
to learn. I'd like to go to school right now.
Or do you have a better one?
I think the better one's like stock market 401ks.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
As a young person, I definitely need to be listening to this. So
Okay.
I'm all
So
ears.
we're gonna put you on the spot here.
Oh God.
Little bit of math, but very basic math, right? So let's say you have $100,000 in the stock market, or even your 401k, but it's in the market, right? Okay. Yeah. And then one day the market goes down 10%. Okay. How much is left in your account? 90,000, right? So if the next day it recovers 10%, how much is in your account?
Less than 100,000. 99,000.
99,000, right? But what's the agenda being pushed by the media, right? Market's flat over 2 days, right? But the reality is these ebbs and flows in the market, they have an impact in your actual dollar value. So to say the market's averaged 6 to 8% over the last X amount of years, while that might be true, if you look at the average from the percentage standpoint, from the actual dollar standpoint, like it doesn't work that way. It's not simple compounding math, right? Like there's a lot more to it. and those ebbs and flows have big impacts. And so once again, to sit here and say like, oh, the stock market is safe and great, it's like, well, like we believe in the stock market and we think there's value in it, but to be in it blindly or just trusting someone at their word, or like, you're in it for the long haul, right? Those are another terminology we hear a lot of, is it's not always the case. You want to add anything to that?
No, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. And then we talk about like tax advantage accounts. Like everyone talks about 401ks, IRAs. And, we looked at as tax deferment, right? Either you pay it now if you're in a Roth, or you pay it later. You're not avoiding tax. Like where if you can start a business or invest in real estate, there's a lot of levers you can pull to never pay tax. And like, that's the difference between like kicking the can down the road and, and just finding ways to like write off, like truly like gain that money that you've earned. And so like, those are the things we just want to put the light and also put it well. It's not like we're trying to like look down on the stock market. I think the stock market's a great investment for a lot of people. It's just we want them to be informed in what they're investing in. And if they make that decision with that informed, knowledge, by all means, like that's for them. But that's kind of where we stand with that.
So when you guys are sitting with customers and they're determining where to place their wealth, they're looking at retirement, they're looking at the stock market. Where do you guys, is real estate typically, one of those things that they're looking at, and that's why they wound up, somebody told them to go do real estate? And then if you guys are selling against those other tactics, what is your selling position against the market and, the other places that people can put their money?
I mean, we start with like, we sit down with the person and really figure out what they want, right?
Yeah.
If they're like, hey, like I don't need the money, I just want appreciation, like we might not even be the right people in real estate to do it. But a lot of people come to us and, they're looking to like maybe leave their jobs, or looking to like maybe buffer. Like
okay,
the people we're looking, a lot of people we work with are, we call them Henrys, right? Like high earners, not rich yet.
Okay, gotcha.
And a lot of times they're in sales roles. I mean, Austin being in sales, and we have like a pretty good like lead into those type of people. And like, sales is very volatile, right? One quarter you might have a $50,000 bonus check, but you're always 2 quarters away from being, let go from your job.
Yep.
Or like the next quarter there's nothing. It's like we can talk to these people like, hey, like let's steady this out. Like real estate is a great income producing asset. I don't think we've ever told anyone like sell out of the stock market and invest all in real estate. We're not trying to compete with anyone.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, most of those conversations we're having, people are coming to us with an interest in real estate.
I got you. So you're not having to sit down in front of somebody and convince them that, hey, this is a better place to put your money. You're just not in those conversations right now, just because that's not where you are in the market.
Well, some of those conversations look more like allocation,
Okay.
right? Because they're like, hey, I want to invest in real estate, but like how much, right? So that's when we get in those conversations of, okay, like what does your portfolio look like now? And we can talk about pros and cons of each one, but we want to make sure that they have an informed, like when the decision maker is an informed decision, and it's not just some knowledge that they were peddled by somebody else.
What do you guys recommend, like as a split for investors? Between these different things, is there like a best practice?
I think we're laughing because it's probably the number one question we get. Yeah. And I think the answer to that is that it's so individually based that like even telling you an answer, it's just, I'd be just making something up, right?
Because
what you're looking to get out of it, right? Like what are your long-term goals? What are your short-term goals? Like it's very specific. And I think that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, is not just kind of pushing a broad agenda across the board of like, hey, you need to put all your money in this one deal we're working right now. Like give us all your money right now, right? It's like, well, no, like that's not who we want to be. We want to be like, look at your long-term goals, your plans, and like, how do we create something for you that's very specific to your end goals?
Wow. Yeah, it's fascinating, man, how all this works, because you guys kind of, if you're getting the right insights at the end of the day, like people are, trusting you to place their money there. And, it's just interesting to me the way this compares against the stock market. I've never invested in real estate, and I've always wanted to, but I just didn't know enough to step into it. So here you guys are, doing this. And so I found it fascinating. And then this guy from Florida gets up and running. I happen to know Grant Cardone really well. And so it sounds like this is something that I should explore. I'm getting a little old.
Hey, happy to help if that's the case. But yeah, I think one thing that Mitch and I always say is, everyone should be in real estate, but not everyone should be involved in real estate, right? And the concept is that, we believe that real estate is such a phenomenal asset class that everyone should have some exposure to it. But that doesn't mean you need to be owning or running and maintaining your own properties, right? You need to take an internal assessment of whether or not that's for you. And we have those conversations, because not all of our conversations are with individuals who are like, hey, I want to invest in a syndication. Sometimes like, hey, I'm looking into getting into real estate. And those conversations are very much, okay, like what What do you envision? What does that look like? What did you have in mind? And then we can kind of fill in the knowledge gaps for them. Okay, well, here's some other tactics you could try. Syndication is an option. But we just think it's such a great opportunity for people, and that's what we really like sharing it with friends and family, because it's been so great for us that it's like we feel like we almost have this burden to share it with other people.
Yeah. And what about managing the properties? Who does that?
The great thing is with apartments, like the scalability of them, like they're so big that you can hire an on-site property manager, an on-site handyman.
Okay.
And that leaves, us as the GPs to really manage like the business. So we look at the markets, like, do we raise rents? Do we run a special to get occupancy up? Do we flip units, to a higher standard, or do we just do a basic turn, like where we kind of clean them? Like, we do business decisions, and we allow, the property manager to, collect rents, take the tickets, write maintenance, do the repairs.
Wow, man, that's interesting. So you guys have made it to how long have you been in business together?
3.
I guess technically 3 years.
Yeah.
2-3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you see like the next, how when you guys are doing your planning, are you looking out 12 months, you're looking out 36, you're looking out 5 years? Like, what's the next steps and the next like plateau? Because you guys look like you're growing really fast, and things are moving quickly.
Yeah, we have a lot. We literally talk about this on the way up here. I mean, we talk about it constantly, and it's one of the things that I really appreciate about Mitch. I think he'd say the same thing, is that like we really push each other, right? Like, we want to do more. So it's like if we're not succeeding in an area, it's like, all right, how do we get there? Social media is an example, right? Like, we knew it was a weak spot for us. Like, we probably had a dozen conversations about how do we do better there. And so when we look at like our long-term goals and where we want to be, you can answer if it's crystal clear, but I think it's clearing up a little bit. Like, we're starting to solidify what that looks like. But the biggest thing for us right now is just making sure that we're continuing to move forward and to press to like what's next in the next couple months, the next couple weeks, right? Those small goals will eventually get us to where we want to be in the long run. I don't know. Do you want to say it's solidified a little more? I mean, I don't know.
Is it like when you look at it, are you thinking it in terms of how much capital you're going to deploy, or how many units, or how many deals, or any of those things? Like, does that, how do you go through that process?
Yeah, I don't think we have like a number goal. We don't have a door goal. To me, it's for what we stand for. It's kind of counter not intuitive, but it just goes against what we stand for. Like, if we say, hey, well, we need 7 deals, it's like, if we can only find 2 good deals, like, does that put us in a bad spot?
Gotcha.
I think our goal is, and I guess we don't have it solidified. We're driving up here talking about it, but our goal is to continue to grow. And I think we both have the understanding that if we just do the good things right, or the right things,
being authentic,
yeah. We did the hard part, right? The hard part's getting started. The hard part's getting the experience. Like, you can't cheat experience. And now that we have that, we're starting to see, like, we've had 2 deals sell, and those investors are extremely happy. And we always talk about, like, everyone's going back and like bragging, like, hey, look what I got. I just got this money.
Let me tell you about my money boy, Mitch. I got money Mitch in Austin.
I like that money boy Mitch. That's really good.
And so
Money Mitch in Austin.
Yeah.
We just feel that, like, if we continue doing those things, like, we might not grow as fast as someone that's like really good, and we just don't want to take any shortcuts that hurt not only us but our investors. And so that might be a cheap answer for not having a strong goal, but I think, like Austin said, like, me and Austin are unhappy not changing and growing, and so I'm excited to see where we go. It's just, I feel like we have a bad answer on where we want to go in the next 12 months.
No, listen, there's been many a times in the 20 years I've been doing this where I don't really have, I know the ultimate goal. I don't have any idea what's coming next, man, except I just got to keep on going, dude. So you guys have both mentioned the whole action thing, and it's funny, I just got finished reading this book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
And one of the things so Napoleon Hill gets to interview the devil basically because of all the work he's done. And he asks the devil, what is the one thing that can ensure that you're going to live a really fulfilling, and whether you're moral or not, it's got nothing to do with morality or ethics. And the devil said, the people that are in the most action are the people that are going to always get the most out of life, dude, because it returns back to you what you give it. So, man, just hearing that from young guys, it took me a long time to learn this, dude, like, a long time, and seeing the wisdom in you two at a young age. How old are you, Austin?
I turned 33 this last Wednesday.
And what about you, Mitch?
I'm 31.
Yeah, dude, this is the younger generation, man, that it's exciting to see people that actually think like, the Gen X and the older generation. It takes you a little while sometimes to run through these things and to see you guys so mature at this age, man, is it's exciting for the older guys like me, man, because the younger generation, sometimes I look at it and say, what's going on here? It just looks like it's a little bit different.
Well, I think that excites us too, right? So like my brother McCain, he's 10 years younger than me, so I think he's 23. But like, you know, he's invested in some deals with us. Like he wants to grow. Like he's looking to teach his friends about it. Like that excites us, right? Like we really want to see people's lives change, not just their lives, but like their kids' lives change, our kids' change because of the decisions they made that were different than the way their parents did it, right? So even from a numbers perspective, like I think Mitch and I would both agree that like, you know, we're not going to get on here and be like, oh, we own this much in real estate or this many doors. Like, that's not really why we do this, right? It's more for, like, the lives we get to impact in a positive way. Yeah. And so I think we are at a unique age where, like, we can maybe still connect with, like, Shannon and McCain, maybe. Like, that's what we're hoping. Like, we're like,
she's yawning quite a bit.
I told you, I warned you.
But, you know, like, if we can start people younger than we did, right, and they can start younger, like, it can really change the trajectory of their lives.
That's what I do, man. I'm looking at both of you guys, man, and saying, dude, to go take this younger generation that's in college and shake them a little bit and say, hey, there's guys, look, these guys aren't that much older than you guys, man. Look, this is young guys that, you know, went through a lot of the same things you did. Look at what they're doing and how they're taking control of their life and thinking for themselves and solving problems. And, you know, that's, you guys should be like the heroes that we have on these campuses, dude, just because that's what we need to be preaching to these kids. This is the way it works, dude. You get out, you bust your ass, you have hard work, you have good ideas, you connect with good people, you do good, honest business, and man, like the world is there for you to take. You just got to go make the step, and this is a great place to start in real estate with us, dude. And so, you know, man, it's great what you guys are doing, man. It makes me really happy as an older guy to see young people out there doing this and you know, making the moves that y'all are making, man. So. Yeah,
well, look, I got to say, I probably should thank both our wives, too, so Abby and Amy. If they
yes. So let's talk a little bit about the families, man.
Yeah, well, look, you know, Mitch and I, like, while sometimes we probably think we're, like, just grinding away ourselves, like, you know, we definitely have a support staff that helps us with that. And you know, and so, like I said, I've got 4 kids, 3 girls and a son, my wife, Abby, who helps with them. So, yeah, great team.
Yeah. And you live in North Carolina still?
No, so I'm back in Baton Rouge now. I just moved back in the beginning of June.
Okay.
You know, Southern family kind of thing, right? There's a draw. Yeah, pros and cons, obviously, but you know, family's definitely going real close to all the help, which is real nice.
Yeah, for sure. So as you guys grow your business, do you see, you know, you said you're leaning into social media now, like what kind of things will you be doing? Are you going to do a podcast, or are you guys just going to start to give clips and tips like we were talking about earlier? Like what's your plan and how you guys going to roll it out?
Yeah, I think important thing for us is we've a lot of times, because we've lacked the social media, we've been like, hey, we need to do this, right? And then we've like set these goals that we've never gotten to because, you know, we were kind of focused elsewhere. So having McCain as like kind of a guiding light for us is nice, and he's giving us real easy, obtainable steps that we can hit. So we're taking it one step at a time.
I'm trying to picture McCain telling y'all how to make a reel.
We'll show you the text. He's really good at keeping us accountable.
Oh, yeah. That plus all the videos that we record where he's like, just do a 10-second video. I'm like, dude, this is way harder than it looks. Like I filmed 30
as soon as that
them.
camera goes on, it's like, what the heck?
But yeah, so there's that. But I think for us, like in the immediate future, the one thing that we really like and are passionate about is investor education. So we're doing that through our social media platforms, but we've done some webinars and things too. So I think in the immediate future, it probably looks more like continuing that series where, you know, we're having deliberate times where people can sign up free of charge and come and, you know, interact with me and Mitch as we learn about, you know, syndications, funding, you know, real estate in general, just a bunch of different topics.
Yeah. So what does the profile of an average like investor look like to you guys? You know, is there an avatar, like a specific, you know?
So
that's a good question.
I think we have an avatar, and it's kind of like going to where we are going. So our avatar is like the Henry, right? The high earner, not rich yet, right? So people that are kind of maybe in that hamster wheel, like they're making good money, but they just don't know like a way to kind of make that money work for them. And like we kind of giving them an education. But to kind of go back a step, so far we've only done deals that have been considered 506B, and that's regulation talk for you can't advertise, it has to be a prior relationship. And so a lot of it is friends and family. And so I'll say for my investors, like I have teachers to like retired business owners, you know, that have invested. And so all around, you know, but they typically have to be semi good with money. I mean, the typical minimum is $50,000. So that allows them to kind of get in, but it's usually, you know, they can invest through IRAs and things like that. Where we are going is a 506c, which means we can advertise, but now they have to be accredited, which means they have to have $1 million worth of assets or make over $200,000 as a single person or $300,000 as a couple.
Okay.
But that's a little bit, I mean, if we're being frank, that's a little bit why we're kind of ramping up our social medias, because now we can advertise deals.
I see.
There's really no benefit to advertise to your 2 followers when they're your wife and
Okay.
the other business partner. So
Yeah.
there is a business reason
I
behind that.
see.
So, obviously the education's there, but our avatar, is kind of who we know. And that's, those Henrys or those salespeople that have maybe high earners, maybe even fluctuating business partners that get quarterly distributions that kind of want to steady that out type of thing.
So what's some of the biggest lessons that y'all have learned so far, just running your own business? I mean,
Yeah, I think the first one, so, Mitch and I both started off doing it ourselves individually. And I think one of the first lessons that you learn pretty quickly is even though real estate gets pitched as this passive investment, the odds are, if you're doing a long-term buy and hold, short-term or whatever it may be, it's going to take more time than you thought it would, right? There's going to be needs. And so, I think that's what spurred both of us on to syndications is okay, this wasn't the passive, easy, set it and forget it kind of thing I was promised. How do I get to more of that part? So for me, I think, there were some valuable lessons learned managing and my own properties and stuff, but it was definitely kind of a bit of a rude awakening when I figured out that it actually required some work, right?
Okay. So you guys y'all don't manage your own properties.
We still do.
Okay.
what have you learned early on, Mitch?
It's all about people.
Okay.
People and team. I'll kind of throw Austin. I don't know. We'll talk about it. So all my properties are in Indianapolis, and I owned I built my team there. And my team is good. I have a handyman, I have a roofer, I have a plumber, electrician. I have people for everything. So for me to manage my properties, and I shouldn't say trained, but all my tenants pay their rent online. So if they need a maintenance request, do it online. That way, because we're all busy professionals, I can then get an email. It's not I have to stop what I'm doing, take a call or whatever. I can then give it to the proper person, right? If it's my handyman. So I've built that to be as automated as possible. Austin kind of came to me with an opportunity down here where we purchased a couple properties together down here, and the team is just not where my team in Indianapolis is. And I will say it's probably not even a quarter of my portfolio, but it's probably 90% of my time. And so it's just really apparent, you got to get the right people. You have to get the right team. A lot of business isn't a solo entrepreneur. Maybe a YouTuber, maybe. I can even think of that because they have production people. We all know there's just so much that goes in everything.
Yep.
Don't try to solve it yourself. Just find good people. And at the end of the day, that all boils down to I'd rather have a smaller piece of a big pie than the entire small pie. And so
I see.
For me, it's just partnering with good people that you can kind of align with, and you
Yeah.
can go a lot farther with more people.
Yeah, and to be fair, I had this great mentor who showed me how to get money and find deals. So I just did it, and then I was that's, and then he complained. So I don't,
It's funny.
So what are those people doing for you guys? It's just the managing and dealing with the tenants and all that stuff?
So for our team, at least the ones down here, they're quite a distance away from him. But we run the monthly operations. We'll still handle calls for maintenance stuff. We'll still these people down here always pay with cash, and so it's hey, I just paid you. It's you look at the bank statement, it's a cash deposit, and you're oh my goodness, okay, let's document it. And you're okay.
I see.
But yeah, if an issue comes up that's someone needs to be on, flooring need to be done, or there's a leak or something, we actually found an awesome teammate so far. We just recently found a new team player that's really stepping up. We just call him, and he's yeah, I'll be on tomorrow at 8. He takes care of it, and
that's it. That's the way to go. That scales.
Yeah. Well, and when Mitch and I run and analyze our deals, we always factor in, property management, right? Because we want it to make sense if we do hand it off. But I think it goes back to both our personalities of we want to move as fast as possible. And so, okay, how can we do that? And it's by pouring that money back into the business, right? So for us, it's well, if I could put a little bit of sweat equity in, then maybe I can get to that next step a little faster. And so I think it's both a problem. We've had this discussion several times. We're I think you should get a property manager. No, I got it. Don't worry about me. You worry about yourself, right? So it's that same kind of competitive nature. And I'm not going to get one until Mitch gets one anyway, right? So it's one of those situations.
So you mentioned syndication. What is that? What exactly does that mean? When you look at So when Grant goes and puts together these big deals for these big office, these big properties, he's just putting together the deal in the front end, and then that's it. And then he's probably got it penciled in, the property management and all that stuff into the deal.
Yeah, by the time it hits investors, the whole business plan should be just like jot down. So you should know
Everything.
who the loan's going to come through, who's going to be managing it, maybe some prospective tenants, like, and what they're going to do to raise value,
Okay.
right? And maybe it could just be holding it for appreciation, but typically it's like, you know, there's 2 open units in this commercial building, like we'll lease them up, and then that will add value, right?
Okay.
Or maybe we do some TI and get an awesome marketing company to be in here, type of thing. So,
Okay.
but syndication, the simplest term, is just pooling people's money and resources together to get something bigger than they possibly could have themselves.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. That makes sense.
What's y'all's advice to someone looking to get into what you're doing?
Well, so can you
advise?
clarify, would you say like doing what we're doing or like investing in like a syndication?
Like doing what you're doing. Like you guys started this company together. What would your advice be to someone?
I think, Mitch hit on people, and I think even looking at where we are now versus where we were, I think the one thing that's contributed to that is probably our network. So going back to people, and I think, there's a lot of phenomenal people in the real estate space that will pour into you free of charge, right? Mitch is a great example of that. We talk and meet with people all the time. We attend a lot of real estate meetups, so there's no shortage of meetups across the country where people can go and meet with like-minded individuals who are in different stages of their real estate investing careers. And so getting in with those people and finding someone who can work with you and just talk you through like, what the process looks like and pour into you. Like, I feel like that's a great place to start. Mitch?
Yeah, I feel like when I talk to younger people, and it doesn't have to be younger to get started, but I feel like you can't cheat experience. And so partnering with people that have done it, let's say you want to get into syndications role, like just go talk to people that have done it. And if you want to start raising for syndication, like raise with a team so that you're not kind of on your own. Mm-hmm. And, if you can do that, like, boom, you're good, right? And I feel like a lot of people try to go out and do it on their own, and it's just so much harder because like you're kind of going blind, like you don't know, like, well, what do you do when this happens? What do you do when this happens? Or you're kind of by yourself. So I think partnering, especially in real estate, and even business, like joint ventures, I think is just a great way to get started in what you want to do. So that's how I would do it. Get that experience.
Yeah.
Is typically, will you guys stay geographically like located around where you live, or ultimately this could spread out all over the United States?
I mean, it could spread all over the United States. I mean, we buy across the Southeast. Like our properties are already geographically spread out.
Okay.
I mean, Austin lives in Baton Rouge. I live in Raleigh. So I
Yeah.
don't think there's anything stopping us from expanding that if it were needed. I guess even McCain's and Delray.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too. I think sometimes like location can be a detriment to people. Sometimes they feel like, like I need to invest where I live. Mitch and I both were living in North Carolina. He had all his properties in Indy, and I had all my properties in Louisiana. So we go to a lot of real estate meetups and like, well, I'm trying to buy a property here in Raleigh, and they're like, where are your properties? Like, we're like, oh, mine are 1,000 miles this way, his are 1,000 miles that way, and ultimately, like if you trust the process and know like what you're doing is right, like it works anywhere, right? So for us, like we're maybe a little more selective in the markets like we're in than maybe like the actual geography, but I think like just to like challenge other people, like don't feel like you have to invest right where you are.
Yeah. So this is a big change when you're making this change from this 506 where you can take accredited investors. Now it allows you to start marketing. What are your plans to doing that? Like, where are you guys going to start? Do you have any idea of, or ultimately, maybe we can help you with it. Maybe
We talked about it. We'd love to ask you guys some tips
Yeah.
and tricks. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys have been troopers listening to us talk about in-depth real estate.
Yeah. Well, and it's
But-
it's scary to be honest.
Yeah.
Right. Like we've done it one way for so long. Like, I mean, we've done 9 deals to date and have done some substantial raises, but like, it was in our wheelhouse. So this is new for us. I just spoke with some people in our network recently who actually said that they've only do 506Cs, which is the one we're about to do. And they did 1Bs, which is what we've been doing. They said that was the hardest one they did the whole time. So I'm optimistic at least that these could be better, but also like it's new for us. And from a marketing standpoint, like I feel like it is a weaker spot for us. So it is definitely something where we're looking for advice and to get better at for sure.
But to directly answer your question, like my advice I just gave, like we're partnering with people, like in this, I guess we can talk about it because it's 506C, but
Yeah.
it's a short-term rental fund. And I'll be honest, when they pitched it to me, we're actually in the fund 1 that just closed today. I was like, I'm not really interested in STRs or short-term rentals. It's like they're very, just labor intensive. Like, you think managing your own like long-term rental is hard, but like when the toilet paper runs out and they're texting you at like midnight, like, hey, I need more toilet paper. It's like, that's absolutely not what I want to do.
Right.
So that, and like, I felt like the space was kind of getting saturated, but like we sat down with them, we listened to them, and like they blew our socks off. Like, hey, look, like we have great advisors, like AirDNA's your best like data, like one of the biggest, I shouldn't say best, one of the biggest data aggregators of Airbnbs where you can see like what the average daily rate is or what the occupancy is. But they use all this data, like they have tech that like underwrites like 100,000 properties a day, and only like 4% pass what they want. And they look at it as a human, and then they have a professional design team. And then like they showed us pictures of the Airbnbs they had, and they're like what Airbnb like advertises.
Oh.
And their whole premise is like, look, like we're gonna be top of the market. So like even if we see a dip, like we're gonna be okay. Like people are still gonna travel, right? Everyone's gonna shift their travel down. I can go into more in details.
Wow, that's
you ask the questions, but they had the differentiator, right? And that's what me and Neil was talking about. I was like, they're the reason where we want to be in this is because they have that like that it factor. And so part of going into C's, we kind of voiced our concerns. Hey, look, like we've only done B's, like it will cut some of our investor base out because not all of our investors that invest are accredited.
Right.
And like, well, we're going to pump out content and pass it on to you. So we have a little bit of help from them. Like they're going to be passing that on to us to help, show like, hey, we closed in this many properties, or hey, we're in this stage of design for this property, or here are our active listings. So again, partnering with them and helping, they're going to help with some of the content. And I think McCain, shout out to McCain again. I think he's really pushing us, keeping us accountable. So, I think those are kind of our two things. I don't know if you have anything to add.
So as far as the data goes, you guys, this other company will handle pulling the avatar and finding those people for you and all those components?
No. So they're just giving us the content. I guess it's up to us to
find those people in the mind.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd love to help you, man, for sure. And that's what we do, man. That's actually the foundation of everything. If you get that right and we really nail it, then now you eliminate a big variable. Now you're only looking at really messaging and channels and tone and all those things. The fish are there. You just got to change the bait. You got to continue to experiment until you find the right message and tone. And then what's the timeline from start to close? Like just those expectations. We can help you lay all that out. And if you do it the right way, dude, it's in the testing phase. You get it figured out, and within 60 to 90 days, you got it dialed in. And now when you spend $1, you get back 100. That's the goal.
Yeah, and that's huge for us. We're all about ROI.
Yeah.
Those are that
I
all
hear those
numbers.
things.
Yeah.
If you can make $1, make $8, how many dollars would you put in?
That's what we always try to get with people. When we take on an agency client, we'll only sign a 90-day engagement out of the gate because it's very labor intensive on the front end. And if we can't get to your allowables and your cost per acquisition within that, we fire ourselves because we're not doing you any good if we can't do that, but that doesn't happen too often, thank goodness. But that's all that really matters is getting to that point that because as soon as you get to a point where you spend $1, you get 10, all of a sudden your pocketbook's open, right? So it's good. That's
wide open.
Yeah. Well, that goes back, I think, to our scarcity mindset, right? So like we talked a little bit about that, right? But it's one thing where we've pushed each other and challenged each other a little bit, where like we both know we have a tendency to spend because we're like, we were very protective over it, and so shifting that abundance mindset and realizing that those opportunities are out there, making sure we're partnering with the right people is key for us.
Oh yeah, dude! What you guys just did with, Shannon, Mike. I listened to you talk about you guys going back and forth. Hey, we only got to film 10 seconds. You do it today. No, you do it. No, you do it. Listen, we went through this dance and had this studio set up for months.
Yeah,
and then we are playing that same game every day, every week. It's like gets to 5 o'clock and Mike looks over at me and I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen today. That kind of thing. Yeah. And then we met Shannon, it's Mike and Shannon's dad were best friends.
Okay.
So
college roommate.
Yeah, Mike's Shannon's dad, I think, calls Mike, or they were talking and said, hey, y'all got anything? Shannon's graduating. I don't think she can come back home or something.
My parents were like, not moving back home, figure it out. Until my entire senior year, I was really stressed, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I was interested in content, but I didn't know what was really out there for me to do because I was a cheerleader, didn't have really any prior experience at coaching cheerleading. Like, I knew my personality, I work hard, and I can learn things so quickly, but I didn't know so I graduated in broadcast journalism, which is why I know how to edit footage and all that. So I sort of kind of pivoted and ended up talking to Mike, and I sent him some of my like broadcast journalism stories, and he was like, "Yeah, just come in." It was just a casual interview, and so kind of just came in, and I was.
I
like,
knew she was there 5 minutes. I was like, Jesus, boy, thank God. I've been looking for one of these. And as soon as we plugged her in, and now somebody came in every day and was responsible for that thing, and she drove us and didn't take no for an answer, and all of a sudden, man, we looked up, and this is just part of what we did. But it was painful to get started, and it took her to get us going.
Yeah,
That's
I'm proud
awesome.
of McCain though, because what he's having y'all do so far is really good. I mean, getting started is everybody's got to start somewhere. Like you can't compare your progress to a company that's got 10 million followers if they've been posting for the past 10 years. You know, it's like everybody's got to start somewhere, and I look a lot to other people for inspiration. Like I'm all the time, like I have to consume the content. Like I'm reading the threads, figuring out what questions the people have that they don't really want to comment under your thing because they see you only have a couple hundred followers. So it's a lot, but it's an exciting journey. Like every day, we're all three. It's something new, and like we went insanely viral on TikTok. We were not expecting it. It went from like 520 followers to over 16,000 followers. So we were like, whoa, overnight too. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, man, once you get into it.
Yeah.
What trends are you guys seeing?
It really just it for me it's different, but between the platforms, like I find Twitter and TikTok for our space for marketing and technology they're more aligned, they're more up to speed. Instagram is typically 2 weeks behind on what's being talked about, like the ChatGPT. That's what made us go super viral on TikTok because we were all seeing it on Twitter. We even talked about it before we filmed it. Like, hey, have you seen this technology? So we were talking about it, and I was like, you know what? Let's do a podcast about it. Sure enough, we got on it right like as soon as people started talking about it. And so after that, we just kept doing it until the conversation died. So we made like 3 or 4 videos talking about the AI technology and the ChatGPT because that's what the people were feeding off of. And I think now it's starting to die down, but like it was.
Yeah, so if you guys, when you're thinking about your content, one of the things we try to do is take something that, whatever ride culture, right? So
what's being talked about.
What's about being talked about in the news, and how do you take that and apply it to some type of message about what you guys are doing? And that way you get to steal the clickbait stuff, man. You get to clout, chase on other people's stuff. And it's whatever's the top of my mind, because the way this whole marketing thing works, what you're talking about today gets memory hold tomorrow, dude. And so these people have, very short attention spans, and it's very hard to break through. And we've just we had this premise that, hey, let's not try to fight culture. Let's just go ride it and figure out how to apply that to marketing. Because you always can take a marketing and advertising spin on almost anything, whether it's propaganda, whether it's clickbait, whether it's any. And so that's what we started to do. And then we started to get some momentum. So if you can cleverly figure out a way, how do you ride the current news cycle with the things that you guys are talking about, it's always going to be the most top of mind and help you get the most awareness the quickest.
I like that y'all are doing the video content now because that's conversational. Like you want people to feel like they can comment and engage with you because the more engagement you have, that's how you're really going to grow. It's super hard. It really is. There's some days where it's crickets and you're like, well, only 3 people viewed this. You can't really get much engagement off of that, but it's definitely a journey, and I'm super excited for y'all to hop on that journey because
this is like the next step, man, where you guys have done this organic, and now you get to go start saying, okay, let's get outside of our circle and let's go start testing these tactics. This is the next thing. If you'll get it dialed in. You'll work with us. We're going to help you guys get it dialed in right from the beginning, and then then it's like, okay, we got this thing. We know what it's going to do. Now let's take a step back, and do we want to scale? Now we can go. You start showing people, a cost per acquisition model on how you guys can acquire investors, dude, at a rate that's better than the market, then I would imagine you become a very valuable person at that point.
I agree.
Safe to say.
Yeah.
That's the way it all works, yeah.
Yeah, we're past our skis on the marketing, but it definitely makes sense, right? If we can acquire people for less than everyone else, right? That's our competitive advantage.
Yeah. And so how do we begin to think about that? From you guys are kind of an upstart, and there's established players, and you have a success track rate. You have a great success rate so far. You've done fantastic. You have testimonials. You have case studies. You have those things. I think the difference can be, you guys, when you look at them all together, highlighting you and them going to take a a deeper look at you on social media, and man, you are the guy that, you know what, I can see sitting across the table and having a beer with those guys. And that's the way I felt when I talked to both of y'all the first time. It's like, man, I could go hang out and have a beer with these guys. I've never met them, and we're going to have a lot in common and have a lot of great conversation, dude. So I think that you guys need to really play on that
I
and
think
play
y'all
that
should
up.
definitely leverage that.
Yeah, because you
No,
guys are
you're
real,
relatable.
dude. You're
Yeah.
authentic. Like you said,
Yeah.
man, you guys just call it like it is. There's no BS. It's like, this is like the real stuff. If you just listen to what we're saying, do those same things, you're probably going to have a similar outcome. It's not too complicated, guys.
Yeah, we took an investor and played tennis with him last night, and it was one of those things where we finished. We're like, I hope he didn't think we were too unprofessional, because obviously we're super competitive and we're out there like, God dog again, come on, like screaming, and it's
Probably
like,
made him feel good. I'd be like, damn, I'm glad I'm putting my money with them, boy, 'cause they don't want to lose.
So,
Yeah, y'all talk about being action and getting stuff done, or get shit done sign.
oh yeah,
We
yeah.
normally have it
Oh.
lit up red, but yeah. Yeah.
I have one question, just because, I'm 57, and over the course of, the latter part of my life, I've learned a lot of these things, and I hear you guys, talking a lot of wisdom, man, that you typically don't hear out of young people like you guys. Where did that come from? Was it, I know you had a single mom. Like, did you just learn this yourself, or did you attach to your mentor that helped you in real estate? Did he also, because what I find, you guys, you understand the way this all works. The people that know how to think the best are the ones that win. And you guys are thinkers and learners, and you're dove into that stuff. And, it's always fascinating, because it's almost like you have a secret weapon or a secret power when you understand how to look at the world like that. And it's just unusual to see young people with that perspective. Where did it come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, sometimes I'm thankful for, I guess, intuition. I think I came from a very conservative community. I think that all helped. Like, my mom obviously wasn't a huge, I guess, piece of my life. I mean, she's obviously a big piece of my life, but she was working. Like, there was very little, I guess, education, business wise, that came from her. And so I don't have a good answer for you. My mentor definitely helped, with a lot of that. But it's funny, like, even with that, like, I'm now helping him in this realm, right? And not saying like you don't
Full circle moment, right?
Yeah. Were you a great student?
I would say I'm definitely an okay student. Like, I was not your 4.0 guy, but I was like your 3.0. I would very efficient. I'd say.
It's interesting you say that. I think we just talked about this on a previous podcast episode. The difference between focused curiosity and raw intelligence, and how oftentimes the focused, curious person who wants to learn the most they can and really become sort of the expert in their industry is always going to end up on top, because they're learning the most that they can. That raw, if you're not focused on it, you can be as smart as you can, but if you're not, so that seems like kind of what your situation is.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Thank you. It's hard for me to talk about myself.
It is hard.
You play sports?
I did, and I think that's where a lot of like the hard work came from. And me and Austin have both been in positions where we've hired people, and some people are like, just jocks hire jocks, but it's like, no, it's like the commitment, like the commitment to getting better every time, and doing, like he always says, doing the simple. I didn't play football, but he's like doing the simple stuff, like blocking and tackling. Like, there are just things that sports really ingrain in you. It's like, hey, I don't want to go to practice this morning. It's like, well, guess what? Pack your bags, get to practice, right? Yeah. And so it's like, I think that's a big piece too. But I guess I'm kind of talking in circles. But
you're spot on. 'Cause I think like sports teaches you like doing hard things is good, right? And like the world kind of says the opposite, where it's like, we'll take the easy path, right? And for us, like, sports didn't teach us that. It's like, you go to practice, you do the reps, you work out, because it produces a better product in the end. I think that has a lot to do with it, where we're continually pressing to do more. So we recognize that. And then I think too, like, it's a very interesting question. And I think back on that, and like, I would say for me personally, I was surrounded by wise men, if you will, right? Who at least didn't take the world for what it was worth, right? They always challenged it. We had a very strong, faith played a very strong purpose in my family's life, and it was the foundation. And so to see them challenge the way the world said things should be done, I think for me, not only spiritually, but also from a business perspective, or even just in life in general, is always being very deliberate about what I'm considering. So, when I look at things like, social media personally or Netflix, right? It's like, okay, like what is that doing to the people who are enjoying it, right? Like, are they just soaking it in? It's like, okay, like, does it bring value to my life? Does it add anything to my life, right? And I think that's enabled me then to obviously grow in knowledge, because I've chosen to not pursue the things that I think are maybe distractions is a good way to put it, and stay focused and intentional in the way that I live my life, that I parent, the way that I'm a spouse. I don't know. Maybe that's my answer. I don't know if that's any better than Mitch's, but
I would imagine both of you guys are very you must be both very self-aware, dude, because that's what I get out of both of you. You're doing inventory of yourself constantly, and you're checking yourself. And when you're going through that exercise all the time, you never really get off track that long, because you're constantly checking yourself. It sounds like it, man. It sounds like you're in a constant state of improving.
Well, I would say, I think we both have talked about this. Like, I would say we're probably our own biggest critics. My wife like fusses at me sometimes, where she's like, "Oh, you're so critical of me. Like, no one ever says anything bad to you." I'm like, "You should hear what I say to myself." Okay, like, and it's just, I don't know. For me, it's like it's striving to be the best at what I do. Right? Like, if I'm gonna do something, like, why wouldn't I try to do it as well as I possibly could?
Yeah, full throttle, 100%. You want to be the best at what you're doing. Yeah.
So does money? Is money? Where does money fall in the scheme of things as being a driver?
For me, it's pretty high up there. I think it was the primary driver probably 10 years ago. I mean, it's why I got into real estate. It's why I wanted the nice things. I wanted vacations. But it's funny, like, now I can buy the nice things. I can go on those vacations, and it's still like, I think it's now more along the lines of like leaving an impact. Like, as silly as that is, it's just like being in high regard in people's minds, like treating people right. Like walking in a room and everyone be like, "Oh, like Mitch, Austin, like good to see you." Like, everyone's happy to see us. Yes. And it's like, that's so much better than being like pulling up in your Lamborghini and being like, "That guy's a butthead." Like,
yeah, exactly.
I'd much rather just, like have that respect. And I'll be honest, like, I think failure, like, I don't ever want to be where I was. And so like that also, it's like, you talk about like starting with why, like, what's your why?
Yeah.
Like that pain, that suffering, I think for me really helps me keep me like, I'm going to do the right things, because I don't want that again.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
It keeps you in your purpose.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, is there something that we haven't asked you guys that you really want to touch on?
How do we not see this question coming? No, I mean, obviously I'm sure you'll share our socials. Like, I think, like, we're truly hope, we are genuine people. Like, reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to help with anything that we can with, I mean, not even just you guys, but anyone listening. It's, I don't know, we always say, like, give, and like, it'll come back. And it's not always like in a transactional with that person, but the universe is a good place. And so the more you put out, the more you get.
Yeah, so if they do want to contact you, how can they find you?
Ooh, do we know all our social media handles? That's a great question. So I will say,
I have it on my phone.
so we have our email address. Like, once again, maybe that makes us sound kind of bad, but investments@bullandbearinvestments.com. That's the one that we know for sure.
So bullandbear.com, bullandbearinvestments.com. Yeah, you'll have our handles.
Yeah,
McCain's,
I'll put it in there.
McCain's got
And
those.
I can't even say we have our own personal handles to follow, because once again, we don't do it personally, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Y'all have been great.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, man. My hat's off to you guys. You guys are doing it, man. Keep it up. We'll help you any way that we can, and we'll be cheering for you over here, and we'll help you go fill that investor pool up for your next property, man. But yeah, congratulations on your great success, man. It was really a pleasure meeting you all today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely.